welcome to another episode of Turn Up the Tech. I'm Mark Taylor, Commercial Director of Invision, and I've got another special guest with me today. So, Ric Litofsky, have I got that right?
You're pretty
Rick?
close.
Litofsky,
yeah, you're close
Litofsky, is
right.
it? It's American. It's tricky, right? So, and obviously I've given that you've joined us all the way from the USA today,
Yes,
and thank
nice
you very
flight in.
much for coming over to actually sunny Bracknell.
Yes,
So
it
that
is
doesn't
sunny.
happen a lot.
I know, it's beautiful out. All this yellow rays in the air. People don't know what they
so
are.
you obviously brought it with you because it doesn't happen very
Well,
often.
thank you very much for the invite. I'm happy to come on out and support Invision on this awesome event.
Yeah, no, you're more than welcome. And we're in our demonstration cinema here, which
Beautiful.
you haven't got to experience yet. And we're really excited to see it because actually this will be the first showing of it with your wonderful product, the madVR Envy. So anyway, we look forward to you seeing that later and giving us some expert advice. But, I suppose
absolutely.
that spoils where you're from. So, Ric, you're CEO and co-founder of madVR.
Yeah, that's right.
And I suppose great way to start it is that name, madVR.
Yeah, madVR. So madVR dates back to my co-founder, Matthias, who's also our chief product officer. He developed the madVR algorithms a long time ago, probably about a good 15 years ago. He started with this, and so when I had a need as a diehard videophile, I had a need for this product that I wanted for my own theater. And being a serial entrepreneur, I saw an opportunity to build a next generation video processor that would be what I wanted to use in my own theater, and figured other people would also want to use it too. So I reached out to Matthias and said, hey, I've got a great idea. I've heard about all these algorithms that you're, doing and experimenting with, pretty much kind of like in the video enthusiast underground. And we talked about, hey, why don't we productize this, put it into a beautiful box. You can just simply press one button. You don't have to be technical. Be a product that the consumer would love. And then, of course, also the professional AV integrator, they want everything to just work, be simple, install, easy for them and their customers to update. And so that was the vision. And we set out to do that. I guess it was about 5 years ago now.
Wow. Excellent. And so that was 5 years ago. You've got a lot of recent awards now as well. I see you've done very well there, actually. Particularly in CEDIA. So I think one of our first meetings was in CEDIA, Dallas last year, wasn't it? And you had this booth with Trinidov and some other guys. I can't remember at the time, but it was slammed, wasn't it? It was rock solid, from there. And I think you'd been around quite a bit before then, but the awards started flowing at that point, didn't they?
Yeah, well, we won some reviews. We when we released the product, we had our first prototype we showed that at CEDIA 2019, and that was really exciting because we just had the one in the world, and we were able to get the market so fast because Matthias had all these great algorithms that we were able to largely leverage. And so we showed the product there. And then at ISE 2020, just as COVID was really ramping up, we launched and started that program. And then we started winning awards, starting from there. And we were awarded Best in Class for Video Processors by the AV Forum, I believe, is based out in the UK. So that was probably one of our most significant early awards. And they've just been kind of nicely piling up. Most recently, Projector Central awarded us with their 5-star Editor's Choice Award, which was one of the highest scoring reviews. So we were really proud to have that experience. And it's a great product, and it's a lot of fun to show it and to let people, provide all their feedback that we take into account. Big part of it.
So tell us what an MV does.
Yeah, so in a nutshell, the madVR Envy is a video processor that goes in line between your sources and your display. So whether you have a dedicated high-end cinema like the room that we're sitting in here, or whether you have like a high-end media room with a with a flat panel or large micro LED display, and it takes the video and it does all sorts of great things to it. One of the most popular features is our HDR dynamic tone mapping. My partner Matthias actually pioneered frame-by-frame dynamic tone mapping back in the day. And so we have quite a bit of patents pending related to our technology, including some aspects of dynamic tone mapping that we do. And so what this does, it just makes the HDR look fantastic, right? So there is no standard for how HDR should be rendered in the home because it's made to be, to operate at 1,000 nits and 4,000 nits, 10,000 nits. And nits is basically, just think of it as a range of brightness. Or nits is a measure of brightness, right? So, these movies are mastered on, let's say, maybe a 32-inch super high-end monitor that might do, let's say, 4,000 nits. And then you're watching this in a home cinema, like I would imagine that we have probably in this room, maybe 150, 250 with this GTZ 380.
No, this is the 7,000.
This is 7,000. Okay. So yes, probably about 70 to 90 nits is what I guess after calibration. So imagine that you've got 4,000, a range of 4,000 nits in brightness that now all of a sudden has to fit into 70 or 90 nits. So there's a huge amount of compression that needs to take place. And being able to do that smartly is the key to making HDR look great, because what you wind up with is blacks that get crushed or whites that get blown out, colors that desaturate, lost detail in the image. And so that's the trick of ideal HDR tone mapping, is to be able to map everything in a way where you make use of that full light range available. So that's our dynamic tone mapping. We also have auto aspect ratio control, which is really popular. I believe you're using it in here. And so when you have a scope screen, and people at home will relate to this, if you have a scope screen, meaning, wider than your normal 16:9 format, you have to have the lens zooming in and out.
Yeah.
And so that's where it gets a little bit tricky, because then as an integrator, you have to try to have code automatically sense this and change it. And then it's also an inconvenience for the customer because, you're at the Apple TV menu and it's 16:9 and you play the movie and it's widescreen. And then, you have to either have your automation system try to do it, or you have to push a button on the remote and then the lens, wait for the lens to zoom out. And then someone says, I don't want to watch this movie. And you go back to the Apple TV menu and now it's on the ceiling and on the floor. And you have to push the button to zoom it back down so that you can see the whole thing, pick your next movie, and just keep rinsing and repeating. And you also run into that same issue with movies that change aspect ratio during the movie, like the Christopher Nolan movies or do this a lot. Most recent one was Everything Everywhere All at Once. Won lots of awards. They actually used 4 different aspect ratios in that movie. Yeah, I think it was 4:3, 16:9, 185, and 239. And so when you're watching a movie like that, if you do not have something like a video processor, you have to just watch the whole thing zoomed out, which means that when it's not filling the screen, your image is smaller and smaller. And so being able to have the Envy deliver what's called constant image height, which means that it will always fill top to bottom and then leave you with black bars. People, I'm sure, are familiar with the black bars.
Yeah.
You'll have the black bars on each side. And so that's a huge feature that our customers really love, and kind of leads us into the next thing, which is the NonLinear Stretch.
Yes.
Because then The other thing that comes up is people are like, well, what's with these pesky black bars?
Yeah.
Right? Like, and then, say they talk to their dealer and they say, and then the dealer tries to explain, oh, well, there's different aspect ratio content and different aspect ratio screens. And the customer's just hearing, want. I spent all this money on this beautiful screen. I want to fill it. Right. And so our nonlinear stretch provides the ability to make the image fill the entire screen, even if it wasn't formatted for that screen. It's also great for sports. So if you watch you have a scope screen like this, and you're watching your soccer or football, as you guys call it, you're leaving on a screen this size. You're leaving about maybe almost 2 feet of black bars on each side. And so being able to smartly stretch that is the key. A lot of people are like, oh, I've seen this back in the day or seen it done before. We actually have one of our patents that's pending is related to our nonlinear stretch. Because the first time we're able to, it's ever been done where we have simultaneous compression vertically and horizontal expansion. So when you compress vertically, it naturally expands. Like if you think of a sponge, and if I was holding a sponge and I squeeze the middle, the ends go out. So we compress vertically and stretch horizontally, and that shares that geometric distortion across both axes. And what's really nice about that is you get an image that you can't really tell most of the time is actually not supposed to be in that format. So it creates that much more immersive experience.
Yeah, and you, like you say, you're getting all the retail estate that you've paid for it.
Yeah, and the level of immersion is a huge difference. You're talking about, I think you lose about roughly a third of your image size when you watch a movie. And it also works the other way. If you have a 16:9 screen, people that are watching this and will know this all too well, a 16:9 screen, you're watching a scope movie, you have quite a bit of black bar above and below the screen. And so sometimes people are like, oh, it's one of these movies. You see the shoulders kind of go down like, oh, I got to watch this movie with bars. Well, what the Envy can do in that situation is we can actually remove up to about half of the black bars on the top and bottom without creating any type of noticeable distortion or stretch. We don't recommend filling the whole thing when you have a 16:9 screen, because then it will start to get a little wonky looking.
Right.
But you can regain about half that lost space, and it creates a much more immersive experience for you by doing that.
And I think particularly for me, with flat panels, that particularly highlights that, doesn't it? And we're seeing the trend of this larger and larger, supersized flat panel, and that's only going to increase. They're getting bigger and bigger, and as we'll see in our demonstration facility.
Yes.
So that has even more impact then, doesn't it? When you're watching it, and I think in that sort of that multi-use sort of media room environment, it really shows.
Yeah, it does, and in fact, we've seen a huge uptake in the use of our product with flat panels and wall type products in the last year or so. It continues to rise in popularity. We see that for a number of reasons. For one, a lot of those panels are 16:9, so being able to smartly recover some of that black bar that we talked about creates that more immersive experience. Also, the tone mapping that we can provide to those displays is great. And on top of it, too, our latest development is our new Motion AI, which I'd be happy to chat with you about. But one of the challenges for the bigger and brighter these displays are, the more challenges they can have when it comes to motion artifacts and judder and those types of things when you're watching movies at 24p on a display that, has panels that can run at, 60, 120, 240, that sort of thing. And so the timing is really great for our new Motion AI technology, because it really, it well suits projectors, but in particular also these large displays.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So that brings us nicely. So you've recently come on board with Invision. Thank you. It's great to have you on board.
Yes, it was a great journey.
And we've launched with the MV Mark II.
Yes.
And so the motion AI technology, I know, is relatively evolutionary, but it's obviously coming through on there. But so tell us a bit about the Mark II. What's changed?
Yeah, so we're really excited. We recently released the MV Extreme Mark II, which was about 2 years in development and engineering, lots of prototypes. One of the biggest things is the GPU power. We've basically doubled now. So that really creates some needed headroom as we continue to advance with things like our motion AI-based algorithms, and we have a suite of other algorithms on our roadmap, which are AI-based, and we're talking about very intensive GPU algorithms. So it really positions us well into the future with that. We've also upgraded essentially all the components to top-end components. We redid our cooling system, which is now what we call our Glacier X2. So the unit is literally whisper quiet. If you put it into silent mode, like if you're using it in the room with you, and you put it into that mode, you can hear it more with the projector. With a projector off, you have to be within about 1.5 feet to even hear it. So it was really important because a lot of our customers use the product in a rack, but a lot of customers have it, equipment. They have an equipment rack in their room, or they have it on a tabletop in a living room type of environment, or media room. So that was really big. And we have a brand new all aluminum, beautiful case.
It does look really cool.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. There's a lot that went into the engineering on all that. So really just a nice high quality case, beautiful aesthetics. And, we have it's a 20 millimeter brushed black anodized aluminum faceplate, little details, right? Like the lid and the sides is all one piece. So that creates a really sleek looking, modern unit with without any seams along the sides. There's actually, like I mentioned, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fans in the unit. Wow. 3 340 millimeter larger fans, 2 120 under, and then of course the cooler fan on the CPU. Yet that's one of the secrets for having it so quiet. Sometimes people think, oh, so many fans, it's got to be loud. It's actually the opposite. More fans, they can run more slowly and more quiet.
Got it.
So that was really a big part of that. And just the build quality, we really wanted to offer a 5-year warranty on parts and labor, which is unheard of in a video processor. Previously we were offering 3 years on the MV Extreme, and so now it's 5.
I mean, 3 years is still pretty good on electronics because we all, that's electronics, right?
Right.
So, but 5 years is amazing.
Yeah, thanks. We really wanted to do it because people are making a big investment in the product. We wanted them to feel that, okay, I'm covered. I'm going to invest in this product. And then if anything should happen, they know that the company will stand behind it. And we feel comfortable making that promise because we know the extent of the engineering and the build quality, which should help the product last a very, very long time.
Cool. So let's talk about motion AI, because that's really exciting. And obviously, I suppose we see with a lot of the flat panel manufacturers in particular, also the projector manufacturers, everyone's got a form of motion flow or whatever they call their own.
Right.
So tell me, what do you do, and how do you go about it? Because obviously, you've got these other guys producing it. So what do you do?
Right. No, that's a great and fair point. So just to back up 1 second in case audience is not really familiar, motion interpolation is the art of adding movie frames where they don't exist. So most movies are filmed at 24 frames per second. And the issue with 24 frames per second is that it's really not that many. You think about like video games or operating at like 120, right? And people want to go even more and faster, and some do. So best way to think about it is if you are moving at 24 frames per second and you need to do a full circle, right? You've got 24 stops in that circle, right? And you're moving in these jumps, okay? But if you've got 60 frames, you've got 60, right? So if you think of it almost like, imagine like a clock. You ever seen those old style analog clocks?
Yeah.
And the second hand just goes clink,
yeah,
clink, like this around? And compare that to a second hand that moves smoothly around the dial, because that's got all these extra different stops along. And so that's really the whole point of motion AI and motion handling algorithms in general, is to be able to smooth that out so that you don't have all this judder, which is basically like a shake or an instability, especially during pans. You'll see like this happening. But traditionally, the challenge has been that these algorithms tend to make the content look not real, too lifelike. Best way I like to describe it is it's sort of like sometimes you feel like you're not watching the movie, you're on the set.
Yeah.
Looking to the side of the camera, watching them film the movie, like they're in your space. And that's also known as soap opera effect. And so the challenge is low levels of motion handling can be done and have lighter soap opera effect, but then leave a lot of the judder. And the higher ones that are available can remove basically all the judder, but in exchange for that, you wind up with a strong soap opera effect and motion artifacts where, you see like during a pan, that's what's called tearing or ghosting or blurring, where the foreground object is moving with a shadow around it, or pixels are breaking up, or in some cases, the motion handling can't keep up. And it'll be nice and smooth, and all of a sudden it'll actually drop back to 24 frames per second for a second or two before it recovers. So what winds up happening is between the soap opera effect and these artifacts, it becomes the type of thing where a lot of people are like, oh, motion handling, we turn that off.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, you mean that thing that we turn off the minute we get a new TV?
And I've had that, and I've said it, and I just, I find it really difficult to, but you can just, it's weird, isn't it? Because it just doesn't feel real. But even though it's probably more real, it doesn't feel,
Yeah. And there is, I think a lot of people don't realize there is an acclimation period where you can spend time. The more time you spend with it, like you kind of just relearn, in the beginning. And this is just with full on soap opera effect, which some people really like. Some people don't. So it's definitely a personal taste. But what you will find is that the more you're exposed to it, some people actually learn to like it. And then you can't go back to the other way, because then the judder just looks so pronounced. So Matthias, my partner I mentioned earlier, he's, as you could imagine, a purist with video. He wants everything exactly as it was. And he didn't think that he would actually like motion handling. He put it in because he knew it was important, and especially going to be important for the upcoming flat panels when he started working on this a while back. But he told me he was shocked to find that he loves it and has become so used to it and addicted to it during the development that it's hard for him to go back now. And when he goes back, the image looks broken.
Yeah.
Right. Because now you're kind of trained to accept the look of movies as they are. So the key is, the holy grail is, can you remove the most fatiguing aspects and the most distracting aspects of the judder at 24p, while also providing that cinematic look and not changing the character of the movie. And that's what we've set out to achieve, and we feel that we've reached there. We're now on our Alpha 7 build, which we're debuting here at the show. And we have a wide range, something that has never been done before, where you can dial in just exactly how much. Like usually you have low and high, right? So with the Envy, you have almost a limitless, because we give you access to a couple of parameters, a limitless scale of, where do you want to be in terms of ultra realistic and ultra cinematic. And as you move up, even when you get up into the high areas, the soap opera effect is much, much less than what you would typically find high. And we've worked really hard to eliminate most of those motion artifacts that also happen. So how do we do this, right? So this is the world's first AI-based per pixel motion handling algorithm in a dedicated video processor. This has never been done before that way, which means we're using AI algorithms. Sure, everyone's heard about like ChatGPT and everything that's happening with AI and this whole like resurgence. Well, this has also been going on in the video world. And so we have this massive powered GPU that's inside the NV Extreme, and that allows us to have that horsepower, that engine that we need to be able to execute and develop these algorithms. So there's lots of training that goes on. Literally, it's called AI-based training, where we're teaching the system to think for itself and understand how to get from one frame to another, because you're basically inserting and creating frames that don't exist, right? So if we go back to our clock example, and instead of moving from, the 12 to the 1, okay, you might move to you've got to insert 2 stops, let's say, or 1.5 stops, depending on the frame rate in between there. And if it's literally a clock, that's not that hard. But imagine a full scene with nature and all this intricate detail. You are literally creating scenes and frames that don't exist, that have to be arranged in such a way so that the motion is fluid. So it's very tricky, but normally this is done at the per block level, meaning motion handling to date is done as a series of grids, right? And so if you think, let's just say, I'll just pick a number, say there's 10,000, blocks of pixels that make up the whole grid, and you have one group of pixels here and one group of pixels here, and you can do something as a unit to each one. Well, we are operating at the per pixel level. So there are no blocks of pixels. Every pixel is addressable on its own, and we can perfectly position it and manipulate it as we need. And that's part of the secret sauce behind how we have been able to eliminate most of the issues with artifacts and be able to provide a solution that doesn't have that strong soap opera effect, but it also achieves the result of, a beautiful crystal clear image.
Yeah, it's really exciting, and it's definitely of the time, isn't it? It's yeah, absolutely. Talk about installation. How do we install, and I know a lot of this is the remote ability is amazing. So I think that's really important.
Yeah. So I guess let's talk about, to begin, what the benefits are for the AV installer and the integrator, right? Because at the end of the day, they want to deliver the best picture quality to the customer. Okay, well, we will come across from time to time an AV dealer that says, gorgeous projector as it is, right?
Yeah.
And the projected image is good enough, right? And, so it's a 10 out of 10. Doesn't need to be an 11 or a 12 out of 10. Okay, so it's up to them what level they want to to deliver, but most of them really want, they understand that the client's investing a huge sum of time, money, and passion into the room, and they want to deliver the ultimate picture quality. So at the end of the day, delivering that immersive high-end picture quality is huge. But on top of that, we do a lot of things that make the integrator's life easier and simplify things and eliminate the source of many complaints. We talked about some of these things already, right? So for example, lens memory is frequently a frustration point for customers. Oh, I have to push this button. Yes, sir. So when you see push this on the remote, and when you see this happen, push that on the remote. It's not an ideal experience. And it eliminates all the integration work to try to automate that, and eliminates the need to even think about it. It eliminates several complaints, like I was just mentioning, like, why do I have these black bars? Why is my image looking crushed or blown out? So it solves a lot of problems for the integrators. And from an installation standpoint, it's really simple. You basically just you insert it in the chain right before the display. So you typically will come out of your audio processor where all your sources are. One input, let's say that was going to your wall or your projector. Instead, you send it into the NV. Then you come out of the NV, and then you go into the projector. There's one primary setting you need to set, which is a peak brightness, so you can get in 30 seconds with a little $30 light meter if you want to go that route. And then essentially that's it. You've got everything operating right out of the gate. Now, of course, that's kind of like your salt and pepper, right? If you want to kind of get into your other spices and a little of this, and you want to turn on NonLinear Stretch and do this, there's, different types of things based on the customer's need and your installation. And so we do have the ability to remote in, and we use that to do training for dealers and also to assist with their installations. So typically when a dealer comes on board, they go through a formal training process with us, either with their demo unit ahead of time, or sometimes they like to do it on their first job. Like, hey, so they schedule with us, and we log into the unit remotely, and we're able to control the menus and show them around just like we were in the room with them, even though we're, in the case of the UK, somewhere between, 3,000 to, 3,000 to 6,000 miles away.
Yeah.
Just like we were there and on the spot. And then likewise, the dealers can remote into the units as well with the customer's prior permission. So if the customer says, hey, I'm watching my football and I like to optimize the black bars, instead of doing a truck roll, you can remote in and have the game playing, go into the controls, and the customer goes, yeah, a little bit more. Oh, I like it just like that. Stop. Perfect. Save it into a profile in the menu and provide an automatic way or a button press that the user, when he's watching his football, can push that and have it set up how it wants. So tremendous benefit there with the remote support.
Do you find that a lot of dealers, do you find they go back and add those presets, and is that sort of an ongoing thing?
Yeah, so out of the box, we have different presets, which cover most of the things. However, dealers will kind of find their own groove and say, you know what, these are our favorite settings, and these are the ways we like to set up an NV. And so once they kind of reach that point, they're very easily, there's a little simple Windows utility that also will run on a Mac that connects to the NV, and in a split second downloads that configuration file, and they have that master file, and then they can flash that on all their future jobs. Right? So when they go into the field, or before they're even in the field, it's literally like a split second upload, boom, and the unit's cloned to their master settings, and they don't even have to sit there and do anything. Nothing. Just plug it in, put the cords in.
I just think that's a great way to be able to offer real value to the client and be able to keep in touch, but actually at really no pain, because you can dial in and you can do all the work remotely. And
even a step beyond just the no pain is greater convenience in operation of the system. I mean, I can tell you that as another example, one thing we already talked about, like that aspect ratio handling, it's such a delightful way to experience a system and not have to have the aggravation of reaching for controls and having things moving. So it simplifies their system. And we're constantly adding new features to the product through software updates that are automatic. They take place usually in under 5 seconds. We like to kid that we have the fastest firmware update in the industry. And when the MB goes, you see downloads in about a second or two, and then it says installing, and then within 5 seconds, it's done. And allows you to move from any version to any version, backwards and forward. So we encourage experimentation by the dealers. So you can choose on your unit if you want experimental builds or only stable builds or anything in between. And you can experiment with a build. And if you realize, okay, this isn't where I want it to be yet, you can just go right back in 3 seconds. It's not like, oh, I don't want to mess with it, right? The unit backs itself up automatically every day locally. Which means if the dealer gets a call and said, oh, my daughter had some friends over, someone got a hold of the controls, they were mucking around, I'm not sure what they changed. He said, well, just go restore your settings from yesterday. Well, I don't have a backup. I didn't do a backup. It doesn't matter. It backs up automatically. Okay, well, how do I do this? Okay, you go into the menu and you choose restore from yesterday. Like, that's how easy it is to use. It's not like a bunch of complicated commands. And you can go back days, weeks, months. And you can also, the installers can back up a master copy to the cloud. So if anything was to ever happen to the unit, or, for whatever reason, the dealer has access and can automatically pull that down. So we make it really impossible to shoot yourself in the foot with it, which is important because dealers want to get in and out of jobs. They want to do a great job, but they don't want to spend hours or days mucking around with something. So, one of the things that we really work hard at is making sure everything's just going to work out of the box and in and out quickly.
So we mentioned audio processing earlier, and I know you've built up a real friendship with one of our other partners, Trinidov, and we're now seeing you at a lot of trade shows together and everything like that. It's interesting. I know you guys are sort of. I saw the one in Dallas where you were both pointing to each other's equipment. It was nice touch.
With Arno and I.
That
that was fun. We had a lot of fun at that show. Trinidov is a certified for Envy partner actually. On top of everything else, which means that their product has passed our certification. It means it's bit for bit perfect,
right,
in and out. So I think it was something like 1,120 different tests, which is frame rate, bit depth, resolution, metadata, like all these combinations to make sure, because our company tagline is every pixel counts. And if a video processor is feeding us a signal, which they are, we want to ensure that every bit coming out of the source player gets delivered to us unscathed and unaltered. And that's being a certified for Envy partner, and they achieve the highest level, which is platinum, means that the product is perfectly compatible, and not only compatible operational, but we can be sure from that testing that it's bit for bit perfect.
Well, we love that. That's great news for us because, as you know, they were our partner as well. So.
Yeah, and we'll be with them again at CEDIA in the large demo coming up in September, I think it is.
I see you did a really, looked like you did a really cool demo with Samsung Wall out. What was that? That was in...
Yeah, that was actually in Dallas about a month ago. Samsung had us to their experience center. It's a beautiful facility, and they've got a lovely room, and they have 146-inch wall product there, which is really spectacular. So we had the MB on there. and we went to leave, and they wouldn't let us take the MV out, and it's there permanently. Yeah, they made arrangements with us, so it's a permanent fixture now.
Oh, wow.
Powering there. We were showing the motion AI handling there, along with our HDR tone mapping and removing some of those black bars to increase the level of immersion. So that was really great. And kind of a funny little story. I was doing a presentation for a room, and there's, I think, 3 rows of 5 seats, something like that. And it was a full room. And while I was doing the presentation, out of the corner of my eye, I saw someone in the back, like middle row, was standing up. And he was standing up and moving his head, and then he lifted his arm out. He didn't realize that this was not a projected image. So he was trying to figure out where the beam was. And the funny thing is, I had at that moment kind of forgot myself, right? Like I wasn't, at first I'm like, why isn't he casting a beam? And then I was like, oh, right. Yeah.
Yes.
It's a panel. And it was really a gorgeous display. It looked fantastic with the MV.
Yeah, I can imagine, especially on that scale, that looking amazing. And also then, especially with the NonLinear Stretch, that make that different on that size. Well,
right, because it's a gorgeous panel. And at 16:9, you're losing about a third of the image, I believe, when you watch a scope movie.
Yeah,
and that's a lot to give up. I mean, you're spending a lot of money for a 146-inch image, and all of a sudden, it's like a 100-inch image. I'm not sure. I have to do kind of the math, right? And so by being able to bring back, half the black bar, remove about half the black bars on top and bottom, all of a sudden it's like, wow, that's more immersive.
And I think this is what, when we've talked over it in the past, this is what makes it really exciting, is this isn't about just pairing it with, a particular projector or, regardless, we've talked about this, regardless of, projector price or, the MV will add its value and its qualities regardless.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, because sometimes people are like, well, I'm getting this specialty projector wall that's $200,000, $500,000, over $500,000. So surely I don't need to add an MV. But it's actually, the opposite, in that the MV will always bring out the absolute best. What these displays do best is render absolutely insanely gorgeous images. And what we do best is the video processing to put every pixel in its ideal, optimal state. And so the combination is fantastic, because then our video processing is laying out the pixels in the most optimal way. And these great display technologies can paint them on the screen, or on the wall, whatever it may be, in the most optimal way.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic combination. Well, I can't wait to see. But I haven't seen this yet.
Well, that's what we're going to do next.
And I'm dying to. I think it went in last week, and I just haven't had a chance. So hopefully we'll clear this away in a bit and get this going.
That sounds like a great
It's been great having you on, and can't wait for the next couple of days. And really excited about it all. And thanks for taking the time to come over. It's always valued. And
my pleasure, Mark. Thank you. We're going to have a great panel.
And we're going to panel discussion as well. So that'll be really interesting. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Thank you so much for having us out. We're proud to be partners with you guys, and appreciate all the great support that Invision's already has provided.
It's awesome. Thank you.
Cheers, Ric.
Take care. So thank you for all. And just to say, this is you can find us all on good streaming, Spotify's, and so on and so forth. And don't forget us. I always forget the YouTube. Watch us on YouTube if you can, please. We'd love you to see this place. And remember to tag us and find us on Instagram and LinkedIn and Invision at Invision UK. Thanks a lot. Take care.